Oh, okay, I see. It's making me remove. Hang on a second.
Sure.
I don't know what it's doing. Okay, I believe we are live. It's saying we're live. So let me go into comments and see because it was asking me something. So I believe we are live. David, will you go check and make sure we are? Welcome to Tamara's Closet today. Yes, we are live now. So I see. So I'm very excited today because I have a special lady with me today. She has been the mayor of my hometown, Greensboro, North Carolina, has served our city for 12 years. Today, we're actually going to be learning a little bit more about her journey into politics, her role as a woman and a politician and a mother, and her passion for her accomplishments and being mayor. Her focus has been economic development, public safety, and enhanced infrastructure, as well as governmental honesty, integrity, and accountability. So I want to go ahead and get started. We have lots of questions, so I want to give a warm welcome to Mayor Nancy Vaughan. And Nancy, can you still hear me?
Yes, I can. Can you hear me, Tamara?
Yes, I can. I can.
Then it works.
Okay, great. So sorry about the delay. I got some kind of message saying something about Twitter or X, so I had to respond. But anyway, Nancy, I always like to start with someone's childhood to kind of see how someone got started getting into what they wanted to do. As we're children, sometimes we say, "Oh, I want to be a fireman when I grow up," or "I want to be the president," or whatever. When you were a child, do you have any memories of of ever claiming what you wanted to be when you grew up?
If we're talking about a little child, I wanted to be a singer.
Really?
Sometimes people think about being a singer or an actress, and I wanted to be a singer. I'm not a great singer, so you know, but I enjoyed music. I'm more of a pop country person, but especially growing up, Michael Jackson and Donny Osmond and David Cassidy, all those heartthrobs of way back when. I just thought it would be really cool to be a famous singer.
You named all the people I had crushes on, like Bobby Sherman. Did you say
Oh,
Bobby? Yeah.
no, I didn't, but that's kind of the same time.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I had
So,
a huge crush on Donny Osmond, like a really,
oh
really bad one.
yeah.
But
That's great. I think I did too, me and my best friend at the time. But so as you got a little older, did anything change or
you know, I had always thought that it would be great to be a lawyer. I was intimidated the thought of going to law school, and I did not have the confidence in myself to think that I could make it through law school. In retrospect, I could have, and that
yeah.
is probably my biggest regret. Um, I am extremely proud of my youngest child. I'm proud of all my children. I have two older sons and a daughter who just started law school last week. So I'm really excited to see her do things that I didn't do.
Oh, that's wonderful. That's so you can kind of live vicariously through her as she goes through that process of
Well,
becoming
so
a lawyer.
I told her when she got her license and she opened her office, she'll probably work with her dad. That I could come work for her, and she said, "Well, you'll have to interview for it." All right.
Okay. Did she get that toughness from you? I guess.
And she has, I think all three of my kids have a great sense of humor. And I like humor. I'm not a big comedy person.
Yeah.
I don't watch, I'm not into like, rom-coms and stuff. Though my favorite movie in the world is Spaceballs. That is the only thing that is um, when I tell people I'm not a big comedy person, and then they say, well, what's your favorite movie? And it's Spaceballs, which
Spaceballs.
Spaceballs, and
Oh,
it is a satire on all of the Star Wars movies, and I think it is just one of the funniest movies ever. Um, so that is my favorite movie, but typically I like dramas and stuff like that.
I do too. I like crime thrillers. I know, and things like that. But you have a wonderful sense of humor, and that's what I liked about you when we've been together. Because I love people that can laugh with me or laugh, that make me laugh. And because life's so serious, too
It
much of
is.
it. Yeah. So, have there ever been any other family members in politics or something similar to what you've done over the years? Or
No, and my parents were really kind of stunned when I told them that I was gonna run for city council. Um, yeah, they were pretty surprised. I have two sisters and a brother, and we are a very loud family. It is a great time in the holidays with all now the grandchildren and cousins and everybody that's together. But out of the family, I am the shy, quiet one. So
really?
you can imagine what the rest of the family's like. So they were surprised that I really stepped out of my comfort zone when I decided to do this.
I wouldn't have thought you were shy. I'm a shy person, but not one to one. Like when we were together, been in a crowd. Yeah. So
And
that's interesting.
I'm one of those introverts also. I can't remember what they call it. Maybe it's an extroverted introvert. So I do well in crowds and things like that. I can be um, what appears to be an extrovert, but then it's 100% exhausting. You come home and just have to decompress and get back to sitting on the couch with a book,
Yeah.
because
Yeah.
it takes a lot of work.
Yeah. Well, that's good to know about you. I wouldn't have thought that at all. But in high school, what were some of your interests or like what? And then what were your plans when you went to college? Did you know what you wanted to do or?
I really didn't know what I wanted to do. As I said before, I didn't think I had it in me for law school. Um, I was a political science major. I was on the student council in high school. Um, so, I've always had an interest in policy um, and I guess politics on all different levels. When I went back to a high school reunion, it must have been maybe my 25th reunion, and I thought that people would be like surprised that I was a mayor of a town, and the people I went to high school with, like, they're no, we're not surprised. You are always putting groups together. Like if there was a group that needed to get something done, you'd say, oh, well, you should talk to this person and you should talk to that person. And so I never looked at it that way, that I was always trying to make things work. Again, not being on the front line, but trying to make things happen.
Yeah. Well, that's great that they were not surprised at what you chose to do because if you started very young then in high school being that having that type of personality and those interests what
So
what
it actually goes back a little further than that.
really
I remember being in grade school, and it was an election, and I know it was one with Nixon. I don't think it was Nixon Kennedy. I think that was, but I remember having a little pad and going around and asking my friends who they were going to vote for. Would they vote for this candidate or that candidate? So, like, I've always been curious about world leaders and world politics, and even as a little kid. And my brother's much younger than I am, and I remember feeding him a bottle. I was about 13 years old, and Nixon was going off on the helicopter after he resigned, and I remember just being fascinated like to see this absolutely momentous event going on, not understanding all of it, but knowing that things would never be the same. So it's all, I've always had that interest.
That's pretty amazing. Yeah, because most people start much later in life, I think, or that was my experience anyway. I was too busy dreaming about, I think I was mesmerized with Hollywood when I was a child,
Mhm.
and the glamour and that kind of thing. But but what would you say? Who would you say? Which parent do you think you tend to take more after?
Hmm. I guess I guess it would be my dad, only because um, he was a basketball coach, and so he had a team, and I kind of feel like we have a team, and he did a lot of public speaking, and so I guess in that respect, I would say probably my dad.
Yeah, yeah. So, were your parents really active in politics, or was
No,
it
no, they
no?
voted. They voted, but that
Yeah,
was the extent of it. We'd have some conversations, especially around the big elections, but no, they were not engaged really in the political process. They weren't, outwardly supporting candidates, and I don't recall my parents and their friends having political discussions. Or so they did their duty. They researched their candidates and they went out and voted, but that was probably it.
yeah. Well, it was a lot different back then. I mean, we didn't have all the access to the internet, and it was a whole different process to try to research. The news
Oh,
media is
now,
different.
in some, you're right, that was a lot of grunt work. Now in some ways it is so much easier, but you also have to learn how to figure out what's false and what's not.
Yeah,
There's so much false news out there that it's really disturbing. And now all of this AI, you don't even know what's real, not only false, it just isn't real. um, that does concern me, and it concerns me for kind of our future.
it does me too. I'm glad you mentioned that because that was something I meant to ask you, and I didn't actually put it down. But yeah, that that is very concern, and it's concerning for a lot of people. And I think that's why there's this tension between everybody right now. We don't know what to believe. So yeah,
You really don't. And so I guess the biggest joke is, well, it's on the internet, so it must be true. But
I know.
um, it is just, it's really difficult to try to figure out exactly what is true, um, and what's not.
Yeah,
I
it
mean,
is.
people don't even, even just going back, like I do think, and I'm on social media. I have a number of different accounts, and my kids do, and I've got two grandchildren. They're probably not far away in a couple of years. And I think social media, especially for young people, now I know I sound like my mom, so maybe I should say I take after my mom, but I think social media is very toxic.
It is.
Um, and I wish we could put that genie back in the bottle. I think we were better off before all of these social media platforms. And it is also superficial. Everybody's going to show the best day of their life. They're really not going to say, you know, this is these are my problems, because you've got to be a superstar on social media. And I
Yeah.
think that's bad.
I do, and I just wrote an article, a post about it a few days ago. How it's toxic to me. In fact, the last couple of years, I rarely go to the news feed. I just go on, make my post, but it's so easy to get sucked into it and want to say something, and it is toxic. And I think it's bad for young people, like you said, because you start feeling like your life is not exciting enough, or you're missing
Well, Yeah, that's a great, what do they call it? FOMO, fear of missing out,
Yeah.
because they see it on TV. The one thing I do like about social media, and I want to set up like another account that I can get on social media just to watch the reels. There
Oh
are
yeah.
some reels that I think are really funny. There's this husband and wife called the Balmerts, and then you've got the Holdernesses out of Raleigh, and then an awful lot of like exercise reels
Oh
and
yeah.
music. And I can hit that reel button, and next thing I know, 2 hours is gone.
Oh yeah.
I hop in bed at 8 o'clock, and I think I'm going to bed early tonight, and I'm up at 10:30 still watching those reels. So that part I do like, but not the rest of it.
Yeah, I do. David and I get lost in the dog reels, because they're so
Yes,
funny. Yeah, but it's good. See, I'm glad you enjoy it. That's a simple thing in life, but it is fun.
yes.
That's the good part. Well, when you were in college, did you? Well, you kind of answered this, but were you paying much attention to politics then at all? Like kids seem to do today, or?
I do remember voting. I was a freshman in college when was the first time that I could vote, and I remembered I was very excited about that. Um, but no, I wasn't really, quite frankly, I had come from a very structured environment. My parents, thankfully, were really strict and held me accountable for things. And when I went to college, um, I was having fun.
Yeah, yeah.
It was just my chance to make my own mistakes, and I made plenty of them.
Yeah, that's yep. I
I
did
have to
that.
say, I am grateful, very grateful that there were not phones and everything else around the videos. That I'm glad that I have no videos of me doing anything that would be, that I wouldn't want my kids to see.
Oh yeah, I know, me too. Oh God. I don't want anybody to know about my college life. I didn't finish like you did, but because I played too much at first and then I didn't know what I wanted to do. So it took
Well,
me a while.
Tamara, I have to say I didn't finish.
Oh, you didn't? Okay.
I didn't. Um, and that is besides not being able, I mean, I should have finished and went to law school. But life gets in the way sometimes, and you don't have that opportunity to go back. And I had two young kids. I had my first at 20, my second at 22. And I really am in awe when I hear stories of young women, sometimes very young women who have been through such adversity, and they power through high school and college and get advanced degrees. I mean, I wish that I had been more like that.
Yeah. Yeah. I know. But at least I really appreciate you sharing that because, you know, we just assume certain people, they go to college, they finish, and you've been very honest and forthcoming about, I went through that. I played too much and was going through stuff, but it's not everybody. That's an age where we're very vulnerable. So
It is, and our past makes us who we are today. So, when people say, "Is there something you would do differently?" No, because I like where I am today.
yeah, that's a good answer. That's a good answer. Good. Yeah, I do too. I now I can laugh at my mistakes.
Yeah.
But anyway, what was your when you how did you what was your first big step into uh like when you left college? What happened after that? I guess just to start your
Um,
journey.
so I worked. I worked for. I was living in Connecticut at the time. I worked for a German engineering company, and that was probably a really really good experience for me because this was a company that was based out of Germany, and I will say German people are very exacting. The woman who trained me that there are no shortcuts. And it was great to work for somebody who was so focused on getting things right. So I spent my first 3 years with that company, and I think I owe a lot of who I am today to them, because they instilled in me an amazing work ethic. And I'll always be grateful for that. They ended up closing the office in Connecticut, moving it to New York. But one of our customers then hired me, which I think is a great compliment, because obviously this person knew me through working with him in a different capacity. And so I went in marketing. I went into marketing for a company that did sludge dewatering. Sludge dewatering, and that kind of is exactly what it sounds like. They take byproducts, whether it is toxic, and most of what we dealt with was toxic, and they literally get all the water out of it, and they can do all sorts of things afterwards. And so I worked with them for quite a few years, and then my journeys took me to North Carolina.
Okay. Now, where are your parents now?
So my father passed away about 12 years ago, and my mom is still here and healthy. And so my parents and my two sisters and brother, they moved to Greensboro, and I stayed in Connecticut. I believe it was 8 years, because my siblings were younger than I was. And, when your family says you're moving, you're moving. So,
oh, yeah.
So they really grew up here in Greensboro. So we did spend a significant time apart. And I think that was a good growing experience for me.
Yeah. Well, that's good, though. That's
Yes.
good. You've had a very interesting life, I think, so far, and that's really great. It wasn't all like a bed of roses,
Oh, no. When I lived in Connecticut, my parents, had said, why don't you come down to North Carolina and stay with us? And, I said that there were certain things I wanted to do in Connecticut. And they said, know that you can always come to North Carolina. You will always have a home. We will always take you in. But if you stay in Connecticut, you're going to have to do it on your own. That was a strong message. And my husband and I, we really, really struggled financially. And there were times I had $10 and I had to decide, was it going in the car, or was I going to buy Kraft macaroni and cheese? And so I know what it's like to make those very difficult decisions. We were fortunate that my husband's father sold us they call them co-ops. At the time, they weren't considered real estate. They were just considered stock, but like you bought into an apartment complex. And so we were very lucky that he gave it to us at an extremely, extremely good rate. And he held the bank note on it, so we didn't pay any interest. So we were able to build some wealth, some money, because of that situation.
That's wonderful. That is. I want to get to here because I just going by what I researched on the internet. So it's got to be true. But it sounded to me like your big step into getting into politics was when you were on that you remember the petitioners committee that that had challenged Jefferson Pilot in their rezoning of that large tract of land off of New Garden. Was that what kind of got you into the council and all that, or?
Yeah, that really was a life-changing event. And maybe a lot of your listeners won't even know what we're talking about, because that was probably, 26, 28 years ago. And New Garden Road, if people in Greensboro are familiar, or Guilford County, and they're familiar with New Garden Road, right now there's a lot of stores and apartments, and there is a school and a park and a library. But way back when, it was a two-lane road. It was in the county. It wasn't even in the city. And there was really nothing on New Garden Road. I mean, nothing at all. And so all of a sudden, there were 6 rezonings that went up at once. And it was well over 1,000 acres. And one of the biggest was about 616 acres. That was the old Jefferson Pilot, which is now Lincoln Financial, the old Jefferson Pilot Country Club.
I remember that.
Yeah. Yes. And so they had, so all of these rezonings put together, they had, they were going to put up housing, huge apartments, a mall, the size of Friendly Center before the build out. So not Friendly Villages, but the original Friendly Center. They were going to put office buildings. It was extremely, extremely dense. And it was just so different from what was there then. So so we fought all 6 of these rezonings. We lost all 6 of the rezonings. And in the end, we could only really fight one. And so we took the big one. And it was a team effort. And it was before social media, which is interesting because the whole city got involved. And it's not like we could reach out to people on Facebook or Twitter and Nextdoor. None of that stuff was available back then. Right. And we had an opportunity. We had to do a petition of city residents, and we had to get 15,000 notarized signatures within 30 days.
Goodness.
And that was a huge, but we had so many people turn out. So there were 5 of us on this petitioners committee, but there were hundreds of people who volunteered. And, the community really came together, and it was great. So we got the number of signatures that we needed, which meant that it was going to force the city council at the time to rehear that zoning decision. And Jefferson Pilot sued the petitioners committee. And I was one of the 5, and we got sued. And it was interesting. So we did have an attorney who stepped up and represented us pro bono. And then I think he realized he was a little out of his depth, but another attorney came and helped us. And what they did was they sued so that the city couldn't hear the rezoning. It kind of just stopped everything. It was just a big pause. But through those negotiations, we ended up with property for the library, about 100 acres of passive park space. They put aside 26 acres for Jefferson Elementary School. There were an awful lot of concessions. So in the end, while it wasn't what we wanted, we were pleased with the outcome.
Yeah. Well, that was great. I can't believe you did all that like in 30 days without social media. And
it was amazing. It shows that when people really want to get things done, they can do it. And I was thankful to all of the voters in Greensboro who really were looking like, where can I sign this petition? And because they had to be notarized signatures, you couldn't just put like a clipboard down in a lunchroom and have people sign. You actually had to see the person sign and then say that you saw them sign. So it was a lot of work. We had drive-throughs. We would set up on the weekend, and cars would just line up. They'd come, they'd sign the petition and move on. It was really pretty amazing.
That is. Yeah, I was reading about it. I don't remember it, but I do remember Jefferson Pilot, and I remember when New Garden was like that. There was nothing there.
Mm-hmm. Nothing.
So it's completely changed. Do you remember was there a pivotal point, or do you remember, when you wanted to venture into politics? Would that have been about that time, or?
So it was that time, and um, obviously we had a great deal of success, and the five of us had name recognition at the time. And the city council person who was representing District 4, that area was District 4, had decided not to run again. I believe he decided not to run again because he knew so many people were mad about the rezoning, and he had to recuse himself because he was one of the developers on the property. So when he recused himself and there was an open seat, I was approached and said, what do you, would you be interested in it? And it was like, yes, absolutely.
Oh, that's
And
amazing.
the rest is history.
Yeah. Well, I'm curious. I'm always curious about this, especially in politics, but really in any industry. But as a woman going into politics and things like that, did you have moments where you had concerns for being a woman, and that there might be some challenges with that, or?
So the biggest challenges that I had were with my children, and it was, it is very, very time consuming. When I ran the first time back in '97, and I served for 4 years, my boys were probably in middle school. The company I worked for, I did ask them if I could cut my hours back to 4 days a week. And I was very grateful that they allowed me to reduce my time to 4 days a week. And it could be I'd use those hours when I needed to. Of course, they cut my salary by 20%, but that's okay. But it was that I was missing an awful lot with my children. And so, which ultimately was why I decided to retire for a little while, because I was pregnant and had my daughter while I was on council. And when she was 8, I decided to run again. And it was different at that point. My parents really stepped up, and we called it Tuesdays with Grandma, and she would come and pick my daughter up and from school, and she would feed her, do whatever homework. Catherine would spend the night at my parents', and then they take her to school in the morning. So Tuesdays, which we had council meetings, it was nice. I didn't have to worry about what was going on with her.
Oh, that's great that they could step up and help you like that.
Yes.
That really is. Well, when you was this, how did it sounds like your parents were supportive. That was kind of my question, because they
Yes, they
helped
were.
when you moved into to politics, and they didn't never try to talk you out of it, or?
Oh yeah, they did. They because they knew that I was quiet and somewhat shy, and I had a thin skin, that people were going to say things about me and hurt my feelings or get me mad. And they were concerned about that. But once I made the decision, they were absolutely supportive. Both of them, and my sisters and brother. So I'm very grateful for that. When I told my mother that I had decided not to seek re-election to mayor, she cried tears of joy.
Oh.
You really, I think elected officials, the family takes a lot of stress on themselves, because she was hearing people say things about me that like would upset her, and so when I told her that I was done, actually everyone in my entire family was happy that I said I'm done. I'm not going to run again. I'm not going to run for anything again. And everyone was glad.
Well, I'm sure it is hard on the family. I've always said I don't know why anybody wants to get into politics, because especially today with social media, there's so much said, and like you said, we don't know what's true, what's not, and it's got to be hurtful when people are spreading rumors that aren't even true. And I don't know how you did it. I really don't. But
It is. It's very hurtful. And sometimes one thing that I've learned now is that, it's not worth wading into the fight. Like if something's on social media, it's not worth me going in and saying you're wrong, because it just brings it to, it just actually, once I engage, it gets more attention. And so walking away from a fight I use fight. It has been difficult for me the last 2 years, but my mental health is better by not engaging with the trolls.
yeah, well, I think so. I don't. I couldn't deal with it. So I don't know how you or any politician does. I admire anybody that can and go through that and survive. But was there any when you were elected in 1997? What was that experience like? What, like when you started with the council and everything? What was the experience like? What you hoped for, or what you imagined, or was it completely different? And were you like, oh my God, what have I done?
It it was kind of what I expected it to be. I knew that there would be a learning curve, that because of my efforts on the rezonings, I knew I knew some about planning and zoning and things like that, but I didn't. There's so much more that the city does that I did not know anything about. And so I had studied obviously for the election, but I was always very careful to ask questions and to research an issue before it came up on our agenda.
Yeah.
And, it is surprising, and even as mayor, maybe more in that position, because I've served as a district rep, I've served as an at-large rep, and now as mayor. What I am surprised about is how many people like really want the mayor to come to things. And most of them think the mayor won't come, that it's kind of well, let's ask. And so I try to go to as many things as I can. We've got council members who are fantastic about always making sure that they go to community events, and to let our residents know that we are accessible. And, once you get elected, it's not that you just sit back and make decisions.
Right. Yeah. Well, that's got to be exhausting too, in itself. Just feeling like you've got to be at every kind of event. Um, well,
I have had to prioritize, and
yeah,
one of the reasons really why I decided not to run again was because for the first time in a very long time, I decided to prioritize myself.
that's
And
good.
when I made the announcement, because I made the announcement early, there was still 18 months left on my term. People like, well, why are you saying this now? And to one of the women, I said, we talk a lot about self-care and mental health. Like, this was beginning to get very toxic, and I had to make that decision, and I had to make it known. And the minute those words were out of my mouth I announced it at the end of a city council meeting, I have felt so much better. I can't even put that into words.
Oh, but that is wonderful. That really is. I mean, I'm glad that you're happy about your decision. That's really good. I mean, you've served, and I thank you for your service, and you've done well, and you deserve to do something different with your
Well,
life.
thank you. And it's good to get new voices. I'm sure that a lot of people will run for mayor because it's seen as an open seat. And I think there are other council members who are going to step away. I think there will be a very different council 14 months from now.
Yeah, yeah. Well, let's see. You kind of answered this one about being a mother, and how you managed it. In the beginning, how did you manage it before they took that, let you have that extra day? Did you get to leave every day at 5 o'clock, or and then
You
go
know,
home?
I am grateful to the company that I worked for. I was with them 18 years, and I started in a marketing position and I ended as operations director. So I was able to grow in my career through this company. It's called Tally Laundry Machinery. They were founded in Greensboro in 1902. We remanufactured and sold parts and did service for industrial laundry equipment. So like your washer at home does 16 pounds. These washers do 2,000 pounds. I mean, this is something you would see in a hotel, hospital, prison, linen rental plant. They're big industrial equipment. I've always tried to find a sexy way to say that because it sounds like it's a fairly boring industry, but it actually was it was a great experience. So they did allow me, especially on a few days leading up that Monday and Tuesday, our council meetings are on Tuesday. I would get a lot of phone calls, and the woman who answered our phones at the office, she was great. She took messages, she followed up. So even when I was in the office, they allowed me the flexibility to do some council related things. So in that case, I was really, really fortunate. And for that, I'll always be grateful to them.
That's wonderful. Um, we think of politicians, and we've really kind of talked about this too, as having to be strong, but as a woman, did you? This is a little bit different. Like, ever struggle between, you know, with your emotions for being a woman and being tough at the same time? Were you okay to be emotional, even if it was in private, how do you
So
handle
there are times I think people say things to me or about me that they would never say to a man. I mean,
it? Okay.
even today, I think that it's much easier to go after a woman than it is to go after a man. Um, and I think that's unfortunate. Um, so that hurt. I also have had some issues of cyber stalking.
Really?
They've obviously ended fine, but there were two where I had gotten an inordinate amount of email from people who wanted me to go out with them, and um, we were able to handle that well with help from the city and the help from the police department. That got shut down. I did have one that was actually much more frightening um, to me, my family, and my friends, which actually I went out and got my concealed carry because of it. I was really afraid of this person. Um, he had gotten much more aggressive in emails, and you can't block emails on the city server. People have to have access, and on certain social media accounts, if you're an elected official, you can't block people. And then this person also knew how to spoof the phone. I think that's what it's called, spoofing. So he would call me many times, and it would show up as different numbers. And so it wasn't like I could block the number because the number would change to something else the next time. And so, I thought I had assembled quite a bit of evidence, brought it to the police department. Um, they talked to some of my friends who verified that these things were actually happening, but they decided that he was probably more talk than anything else. He ended up getting arrested in another county for going after another woman.
Oh, that's amazing.
Ended, and I have not heard from him, and I've not heard from him probably in 2 years, and I'm grateful for that.
That's frightening. Did the police kind of give you any kind of protection for a while? Like, how weren't you afraid to go to your car when at night, or?
Well, you know, during council meetings, we do have police presence in the building. They always walk us to our cars. If I feel like I'm going to an event where I could be put at risk, they are very helpful, which probably, if I feel like I'm going to go to a meeting where I might be at risk, they probably already had security measures in place for the community, not just for me, but for what was going on. So, you know, I remember one time, if you recall, the George Floyd riots that were
Yeah.
happening downtown, and I um, I wanted to come down. What was happening in my city, the way people were hurting and what's happening in my city, I felt I needed to be downtown, and my significant other said that he wasn't going to let me go downtown unless I got a police escort. And so I called the police chief and the assistant city manager over public safety, and I said, I really need to be downtown. And they said, no, don't come, because they were afraid that I would become the focus of that rage that was going on. But
Uh-huh.
more than that, they were also afraid that they would be too busy watching me to make sure that I was safe, that they might not see other things that were going on during those protests. And
Right.
so it was very difficult for me to sit home. And I'll tell you, I cried those nights. I saw what was going on social media, on the news, and you know, my family didn't want me there, and I could understand why the police had concerns about me being down there. I've been mayor for a long time. People know who I am. When I go out with family, friends, my daughter started this where we have the 50-foot rule, which means we can't walk more than 50 feet without somebody stopping and talking. And I love that.
Yeah.
I love that people feel that I'm approachable and they want to talk about an issue or take a picture. I think that is great. I'll be disappointed when that stops at some point.
Oh.
But because I'm noticeable, you know, it does give concerns from time to time.
Yeah. I'm sure. Did you ever feel it like an unfair advantage of being a female politician in your career? Like, for instance, this is one thing that men can be tough and be aggressive and it's okay, but when women are tough or we're firm, and I've had this just in my career, if you get firm and stand up for yourself or whatever, then you're accused of being the B word almost.
Well, you know, I agree 100%. And, you know, I have been called combative in a couple of times, which really shocks me because I think I'm the furthest thing from combative.
Uh-huh.
I don't go anywhere looking for a fight.
Right.
I never, you know, I think I always try to be respectful, but I'm going to stand up for myself, and I'm going to stand up for what I believe in, and I'm going to stand up for the programs of the city. So um, I think combative is just another word of saying the B word. I don't know that they would call a male mayor combative if
Yeah.
he was representing the city. I don't know that.
Yeah. See, I know. I've always, it's just that it's kind of not fair for us ladies, but
Mhm.
we do have to be tough to take up for ourselves. Well, okay, you said you were shy. What was the campaigning like for you? And did you enjoy that part? Because public speaking is people, they fear that over death. And was that something that came natural to you, or is that when you became an extrovert, or?
No, well, you know, it's interesting. I did read a book by Roger Ailes, and you know, I think he's a disgraced former Fox News. Maybe he started Fox, but he wrote a really good book. Somebody gave it to me back in 1997 called You Are the Message. And it was all about how to present yourself and talked a lot about public speaking. And so when I ran for mayor in, I don't even know what year it was, but it was 11 years ago. And I knew that I was going to have to debate the mayor at the time, who was, he had deep roots in the community. He was very smart. He was telegenic. He was a great speaker. When I got my first notice that I was going to have to do a forum with him, I don't think I slept for 3 days. And I remember at that forum that, like, I could literally feel my heartbeat. I could hear the blood in my ears. But so I used to like write out, if I was going to give a speech, I would write it out word for word. Then I went to an outline, and now I might bring a note card with 3 words on it just to make sure I hit my high points. But it's practice. It is just absolutely practice and preparation. You can't do anything unprepared. So when I go into like middle schools and high schools, I tell those students that they need to get comfortable when it comes to public speaking. Ask the questions in class, be willing to do announcements, embrace getting up and doing the book report or whatever it is that, when you go for a job interview, that's public speaking, whether you're speaking to 1 or 2 people, or like last night, there were 20,000 people.
Yeah.
So, just get comfortable with it. You will serve yourself well.
Well, that's great. Because that is a fear of most people,
It is. So I was able to speak last night at the Kamala Harris rally at the Greensboro Coliseum, and there were about 20,000 people. And I think 12 years ago, the thought of doing that probably would have just, sent me under my covers. And I had a great time. But it's preparation, confidence, and practice.
So you did enjoy it. Everything went well. Okay, good. Well, so how did you handle the part of, well, we kind of did this about people not being for you. Would that be one of your big challenging things in the beginning, or?
Yeah, and my mom always said, you catch more flies with honey than you do vinegar. And I have always, if I knew that somebody didn't support me, or if I wasn't their choice, I would still go out of my way in years to come to try to convert them. That but you're never going to get everybody to love you. So some people you're just going to have to write off.
No, you're right. You do. So that's good. But you have a great sense of humor.
Thank you.
And do you feel like that's helped you in your career? Were you able to laugh at yourself, like when times got tough, or or you think, God, I wish I did something different? Could you laugh at yourself so that you didn't get too upset about it or serious, or?
I think everybody, I think, has to give themselves some grace. We're all going to make mistakes. We're all going to say something we didn't mean to. So I've learned how to forgive myself, which I think is a big deal. I think we should all do that. And life is too short to not have fun. Top Golf opened today, and that really is a big deal, because lots of people will come to Greensboro, and when site selectors look for places for companies to come, we've had great success. Top Golf is one of those communities they look for. So I was asked to do the first swing, to hit the first golf ball, and I'm not a golfer, and I don't remember the last time I had a club in my hand. And it was like, so what? I mean, I missed it the first time. The second time it went a little ways, but you just got to learn to laugh at yourself. And it was fun. And yeah, I just try not to take things seriously.
That's good. what's been the most difficult part of your careers or for
The
you?
most difficult parts really are tragedies. And, the one that always comes to mind, the very first one, is the tornado that we had in East Greensboro. It was 5.5 years ago. And it was, uh, I can't even explain. We went out that night and it was so incredibly dark because there was absolutely no electricity. And just to just to feel it and try to see, went back the next day at daybreak and rode around with the police chief, and to see people coming out of their homes, one, glad to be alive, glad to be alive. And we were very fortunate. We only lost one person, and he was at a traffic light and a tree fell on his car.
Oh,
That was the only fatality we had. I hate that we had that fatality. We had no major injuries. We were so fortunate. But houses and businesses were just absolutely destroyed and flattened. And many of these people did not have insurance, or they were underinsured. And, knowing that the rest of their lives was going to be impacted by what happened, I think it was 12 minutes, that 12 minutes has just changed the trajectory of their life. So that is the thing that will probably stick out in my mind the most.
I'm sure that was horrible. That really was. Um, those I don't even know. We're fortunate that we have. When I see some of these tragedies like this, like in Texas and places like that, where they're just humongous, and I don't even know how a town rebuilds after that. You know. Well,
you know and we learned a lot about the federal government and how they help and how they don't help. Unfortunately, they don't put houses back to the way they were before the tornado. Their goal is just to make them livable, and there's a big difference maybe between how you are living and what's considered livable.
right. Exactly. What's been your most proud accomplishment? Do you have one that just pops out in your career?
I don't have one, and this was this it's economic development, and it has been a long time coming. We have a great economic development team. We've stayed together. We've worked on things that have enabled us to get, Honda Jets and Toyotas and Boom Supersonic and Pro Kidney, RF Gorilla, all these great companies. And I believe that when this council leaves, that we are leaving the community in a much better place than when we found it. My hope for who is ever on the next council, because there will be some people, that they don't mess it up. We've worked on this for over 10 years. We're finally seeing the fruits of our labor. We need to make sure that our residents will get these jobs, that will get more housing and transportation. So when you look at economic development, when I started and to where we are now, that's probably my proudest achievement. Again, I didn't do it by myself.
Right. Yeah. But that is great. That is a great accomplishment. And this is something I want to ask you. I really didn't know how to ask it properly. I know what I'm wanting to ask you, but I can't seem to get it in words. And because your focus also has been on integrity and accountability and honesty, governmental honesty. How can we, as you said, social media is toxic, and
Mm-hmm.
I feel like things have just keep getting worse. And I think it's a lot to do with social media. And but how do we get that where people to trust in the government, trust politicians, and or even just stop fighting? What could change? Where does the change? Where would it begin? Because
So, to the social media part, when I do see somebody say that I'm corrupt or I've made money or whatever. I do now say, name it. If you're going to say it, name it. How am I corrupt? What money have I taken? What have I done wrong? Don't just say it. What is it? And that usually shuts people down because they don't have something to come back with. Because I haven't done any of the things that, are out there. So I do think that we do have to call people um, on their misinformation or their whatever. But I do think as a city, I think we're pretty transparent. All of our meetings are televised, even our work sessions. We've got a great public records request system. I think as elected officials, we need to be as transparent as possible.
That's good. That's good. Do you think things could change with the medias? I mean, remember when we weren't so divided there either? I mean,
I think things really changed when we ended up with CNN and Fox News.
yeah,
And I think that's really kind of the beginning of all this toxicity. And, now there are just so many more stations, and that people only watch, the station, they only get their information from one. Um, Certainly I have political leanings, but I like to watch all the different stations because it's interesting to see the different takes on things.
right.
Um, I don't think we're ever going to go back to just ABC, NBC, and CBS. We'll never go back to those days.
Yeah. I liked it when Walter Cronkite just read the news off the piece of paper,
Yeah,
And I guess those days are gone.
I think
Um,
they are.
and I hate it. But have you had a mentor over the years? Who was your go-to person? Or you don't even
Well,
have to name them if you don't want to.
yeah, I
But
mean, I've had lots of mentors, and I think it's situational. It depends kind of on, what the issue is. I will say that Mayor Pro Tem Vaughan Johnson, who is a jewel of Greensboro, I sit next to her at council meetings. There are times that, she will whisper some very important advice in my ear, and I always take it because I know I completely trust her. And I think when you trust somebody, you can take their criticism or suggestions much easier. And so I've had a lot of people who have offered me advice, and for that I've been fortunate.
that's great. I think it's important to have that go-to person. No matter how old we are, we need that lift. We need someone to lift us. And
Yes.
and so when you won the first election as mayor, what was going through your mind? Did you go, "Oh my God, what have I done?" Or were you like excited? Or
It
what do you
was kind of those like, oh my God, like it happened. And it was an amazing feeling. And I knew that it was time to just dig in and get to work. And I was fortunate that I had been on council prior to that in the at-large seat. So while I still had a learning curve because the mayor's position is different than the other council people, but it wasn't as bad. And we have a great staff that I'm able to count on them when I need information and support.
That's great. That's great. Do your have your kids been proud of you? What are I know I'm sure they're glad you're stepping out soon, but were they proud? Like were they like, oh, my mom's the mayor and
I think they're proud of me. I'm proud of them. And I do think they are. My youngest one also is very political. Her dad was a state senator when we were married, and he's an attorney, and so she kind of has a double dose. So I think she may stay in the public sector. My two sons are more behind the scenes people. Um, I think they were proud of me, and I'm proud of them.
oh, I would be proud of my parents if they had done something like that. But is there anything that you look back that you would have done different? Do you ever say, "Oh, I wish I did"? Even
Yeah, there's probably a lot of things that I would do differently. The biggest one that comes to mind, and I don't know how we could have done it differently, but when we look back of those years of COVID, the pandemic, and the damage that it has done to families, businesses, mental health, schools, like, is there a different way we could have gone about it? I'm proud of what I did during that time because I did it with the information that was available to me.
yeah,
Hindsight being 2020, I think we would have done things differently, but I just hope that we're better prepared for the next one.
yeah, yeah. Well, I think that we never had that happen before.
No,
So, yeah, and we're going to make mistakes and we learn from them, and hopefully it won't happen again. But if it does, we'll know what to do differently. But
right.
now that you're retiring next year, what's next for you? What do you do for fun? What does Nancy do for fun? What?
So while I'm going to retire from public life, I'm not going to retire completely. I do have a couple irons in the fire of things I might like to do for a couple of years, but I hope to spend more time with my grandchildren, my family, my friends, and more. I think the stress of being the figurehead will be gone, and I think that'll be great. I might actually cook. I
Oh,
haven't cooked in a long time. I used to be a good cook a long time ago, not so much lately. So
yeah.
I've got to maybe try that again.
Oh, that's wonderful. Well, I know you're a huge dog lover, and I'm sure your dogs will be happy to have you around more.
I think they are happy when we're around. Yes.
Yeah. But do you have do you have hobbies, or did you not have time for that?
I like to read if that's a hobby. And one
Yeah.
thing that I started last December was I started an exercise routine. And I go to the gym a couple days a week and I try to walk every day, depending on the weather. And I have found that, like the walking, even getting out and listening to music or listening to an audible with my dog is just a really nice way to power down. I don't talk on the phone while I'm walking. It's kind of
Yeah,
just that, the dog, me, and outside.
that's good. And we talked about it, and I'm proud of you for really getting into that. You look great.
Well,
So
thank you.
that's really, your health should come first over
Yeah.
everything. Yeah.
And I am a type 1 diabetic, insulin dependent. So that diet and exercise really is a lifesaver.
Good for you. Good for you. Well, here's my last question. What would you say to a woman? I mean, it could be a man, but I guess I'm just thinking of women right now who want to get into politics about I don't know, about the emotional side or just anything, the challenges of being a woman. What advice would you give someone?
Well, one, I know that there are some people who run for elected office who just want to be an elected official. They just want to be elected to something. I would tell a woman, I would tell any person that if you're going to run for elected office, you have to have the passion for it. That it's not that you just want to be elected or you want to get on city council so you could run for Congress someday. That that's not the thing to do. But you have to do what you feel passionate about, I think is the first thing. And then secondly, it would be ignore the noise, ignore the trolls, live your life, do the best you can do. And I think that's all we could say about anything is be the best you. I'm not going to be fill in the blank. I'm just going to try to be the best me.
Good. Well, that's good advice. You won't do something well if you're not truly passionate about it. And
True.
it was obvious you started at a very early age. So I think you followed your heart and your dream. Um, uh, I want to thank you for being here, Nancy, today. This has been fun for me to learn a little bit about you, and I enjoyed our photo sessions. I've had two
Yeah.
with you, And I'm looking forward to having you on the cover of my fall issue. That's going to be fun.
I am
Is it,
too.
yeah, it'd be fun. The pictures look great, by the way. So,
Good.
is there anything else you want to mention, advice, or just something you want to mention that we didn't cover?
Well, I think you were really, I think you covered a lot. One thing that I would tell people is, besides giving yourself some grace, because I think that's really important, that people need to recognize that, I think there are some women, they'll say I'm a stay-at-home mom, but they don't give themselves credit for all the work they're doing within the community. And I think it's important that when if you're looking to build a resume, to really look what it is that you do. Young people who are coming out of college or be like, well, I don't have a resume, I didn't do anything. But, when they've served on boards or they've gotten involved politically, all of those things count. So I think people realize if they took a look at their life, they would appreciate the impact that they've made on their families, their neighborhoods, and cities and states. And we can't run without everybody doing what they're doing. So I appreciate that.
That's great. Well, that's great advice. So I'm so thrilled to have you here, and I wish you all the best in your all the new things that you're going to get to do and venture in, and just having some time with your family and grandkids. I want to thank my viewers too for their continued
Yeah.
support, and make sure you share the replay of my interview with Nancy on any of your social media sites. It's also on YouTube. And to your own success and dreams, just keep on rocking it. Take care, and we'll see you next time.